What's up, folks? It is time for my Sketchy Goodness. Once again, I am Konrad, your host, and we are joined by our co-host and creative uh, genius, Keith Grachow. Keith, how you doing, buddy?
Yeah, how are you doing, man?
I'm doing good, feeling good, freshly showered, which is always nice, and enjoying. And to the folks out there on YouTube land watching live with us, hey, how you doing? Hope you're doing good. And to the folks watching sometime in the future, I hope all is well, that things are better, and that you're buying amazing comics from indie artists. Yeah. So, Keith, I guess to start off, you mentioned prior to going live, you're going to do some flats. So, when you're good and ready, if you want to share your screen, go for it. But I did want to mention and start asking questions with you went to, if I'm not mistaken, Rose City Comic Con just recently.
I did. Let me share my screen here.
Sure, let's get that up.
There we go. Yeah, so this is Cushing County. I think it's a slightly different, couple different pages that I was working on from last time. And I'm just going to be, it's called flatting. I think I've done that before with Saltwater, uh, issue 5 and maybe issue 6. I think I might have done it with both. Yeah, and it's just laying down value, grayscale value in this situation so that I know like what the light source and what the characters look like and all that kind of stuff. It's a very basic way for me to get the fundamentals of what what this space looks like with these characters, and then so it's not really light source as much as it's just the ambient light. So we're in a store, so therefore everything's going to be a little bit brighter. If it was like in a cave, I'd probably make everything darker, right? So that's what I mean by light source. So go ahead.
Yeah, so a question on that then. When I think a lot of people who do not draw as an everyday thing, or perhaps every year thing even, often when we think of lighting in the context of drawing, we go, oh, well, the sun goes in the top right corner, because that's typically what we did when we were children and doing arts and crafts in whatever grade school it was. But, having done what I've done and spoken to all the people I've spoken to and watched you draw as much as I have, I guess one of my questions that I'm curious about and would love your feedback on is, when it comes to a light source, is it easier to draw if you have definitive light source or sources in a given area, or if you have just sort of we're outside and the sun exists?
So you're talking about a direct light source that's obvious versus, let's say, when you're indoors, you've got artificial light sources. You may have natural light coming in from windows. And then, of course, we're not even talking about bounce light, rim light, all the kinds of different kinds of light that exist when you have different fabrics and different surfaces reacting with the light that's coming in or being created by whatever light source you're using. So, like if it's like sun and you have an obvious view of the sun so that like all the shadows are consistently going a certain way, in some ways I guess that's a bit easier, because ultimately you're creating the world, so you control how the composition looks, and therefore you can fudge light if you need to. And when I say that, I mean, like, you want to be consistent, but if your character is like doing something dramatic and you do like a close up of the character, you may have, even though they're in a direct sun, and like the light is coming down in an angle that's like to the side or something, but all of a sudden you want to have like some kind of crazy uplighting, you could fudge it a little bit because You know, if they get closer to you, you can hypothetically say something around them is blocking the light source, and maybe a bit of the light's just coming on in either side of them or something, just to make it more dramatic, right? I mean, you could. It has to just be. It has to feel right to the reader, I guess. At the end of the day, if it feels like
Mhm.
it's something it takes the reader out, then it's not working. Oftentimes, the reader doesn't actually notice exactly where the light's coming from unless it's very obvious.
Yeah.
Uh, I mean, to be honest, I have difficulty with light source because there's so many different variables when you're dealing with, like, as I said, direct light, artificial light, bounce light, rim light, like all those things can affect how a room or a space will look, and therefore um, you have to make sure it works, right? And if you're being like, if you're like going, okay, no, the light has to work. This is where the light's coming from, and this is how I drew it, and it doesn't really work. Then either you need to redraw it or you need to fudge it, right? Does that make sense? Because like if
Yeah.
all of a sudden the let's say um, you want the viewer's eye to go from uh, generally it's left to right, up to down, right? Oh, that's good. Um, so
Got to
you want
lead that eye through the page.
yeah, it goes this way, right? So let's say you have shadows that are all kind of facing in this direction, right? You want the shadow to kind of take you to the next panel. Oh, sorry about that. Ignore that. That is. Um, and so you know, like you're wanting to create that kind of very, you know, like you heavy shadow type of situation, and then you go here, and all of a sudden you realize that it doesn't work for this second panel for whatever
Right.
reason. It maybe you have to either redraw the composition so it'll work for the panel, or you have to rethink. Maybe you go, okay, well maybe the lighting changes. Maybe there's another light we don't see somewhere else that causes like lighting on the side here. Like you could,
Hmm.
you know, I mean, it's at the end of the day, as I said, it's got to work for the reader and work for
Yeah.
you. So you have to plan a lot of this out. It's always helpful to plan out. If it's especially if it's like a really moody type of uh, uh, comic that you're doing, where there is a lot of use of heavy shadow and light and stuff.
Like
You
a
want to
noir.
kind of plan it out a bit. If this kind of comic book, um, as you see here, there's like not a huge amount of shadow and light. It's probably just going to be like very minimal, just
Mhm.
because that's what I feel works in this particular style, I guess. So there may be like you know, maybe I'll make it so that depending on who's talking. So maybe if I don't want the audience to be focusing too much on what's happening to Mr. Chaco, maybe I'll fill in. I'm just kind of maybe make this darker, right? Overall darker, right? When I do the light and shadow. Right now, this is all I'm doing is it's really more about local color. I think I've talked
Mhm.
about this before, which is like regardless of the um, light source, it's going to be the same color from room to room. It
Yeah.
just, if I were to, you know, hypothetically, if all of a sudden, let's see, if I were to just real quickly fill in. So his pants are darker, his fur is this color. Um,
Now, when you
his
say color, you mean value, right? Like, because you're again working on gray, you'll add your colors in afterward.
Yeah, sorry, but yeah, value. But I'm thinking in regards to color as well, just because when I say local color, just I mean like it's going to be consistently whatever this color it ends up being. If it's like ends up being like a yellowish color, it's going to be consistent from room to
So
room. But I just wanted to. I'm just trying to make a point when it comes to like when we're talking about local color versus like I think that's about the same. Okay, so I'll just do one more thing here. Okay, so let's say we're saying hypothetically, let's say that the next panel, we go from this panel here where we're in the room talking, and then all of a sudden the lights go out in the next panel, which is this one right here.
mhm.
So even though the local color is the same, I may because the lights went out here. Oh, so I go like this. So you see now it's all a single value.
Yeah.
I may then go like that, which is I just used an adjustment layer called multiply, which now lets the local color come through, but it's a darker, everything's darker, right?
Gotcha. Okay, so basically, this allows you to assign all your, as you're doing with your flatting, you're assigning all your value, and then basically later on, you could go in and say if the rabbit's name, what is his name?
Dustin.
Dustin. So if Dustin's shirt is yellow, you can pick that specific yellow. Maybe you can have the code jotted down in your like character Bible, and then you could basically go from page to page and go yellow, yellow, yellow,
Yep.
yellow. And because
Yep.
you've assigned all those values already, and then hit multiply, it just goes, oh, cool, here, and here's all the dark, and here's all the light shots, and it
Yeah.
just sorts it. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. Now, the reason why I'm doing this value first, like in grayscale versus doing color first, is it gives me an idea to make sure that like you can see here, like for the most part, um, like there's a bunch of different values happening here. So
Yeah.
it makes it like the eyes can see things clearly. It gives a difference for it makes the characters different, right? It makes the background, the environment different. Because if everything looked, if they were very, very similar value, it may be hard to tell what's in front, what's behind, right? And so this allows for me to kind of get a really good idea at this stage. And then if I wanted to, so here's just to kind of um, mess things up a little bit. Let's say I go, okay, I know that this room is kind of going to be a bluey because of the light source. Everything's going to have like a bluish tinge to it. And I just go in here and then I go to color and bam, everything's got a bit of a bluish tinge to it. But now I can go in afterwards if I want to, and like I can just let's see, select Mr. Chaco's head and arms and stuff, and I'd be like, okay, I know that he's like a kind of like a brown,
Yeah. Chocolate
kind
chip
of,
cookie. Yeah.
yeah, like a brown color. Okay, so now what I can do, I've got this brown, and so again, going back to different light sources
Hmm.
and different like color. Another aspect is color themes. So you may have one room that's very blue, and another room is very warm yellow, and another room is red. And so to get that kind of like consistency with the characters, I may, uh, you can see me. I'm fading that brown a bit, right? So if I
Oh,
can
right
use
on. Yeah.
this, I can use that same, to your point. I can create a swatch of that brown, create a color library, and it's going to be the same from no matter when I'm using that character, again, the local color, but I may decide to fade it a certain amount depending on the room they're in. So therefore, I can get it a more intense, can keep this a much more intense brown, or make it a little bit more like it's like under artificial light. So it just gives me that ability to do that. I mean, there's all different ways I can do this if I wanted to. It's whatever works best. And to be honest with you, sometimes I don't even know what's going to work best for a project until like I get to the very end, and then I kind of go, oh, this needs me to do this a bit more. So like, even though I'm
Right
doing
on.
all these values for now, I may decide once I do the main book, like when we get, I may change this up because it may not work for this project as much. But either way, like right now, I find that doing it this way, it allows for me to really quickly kind of just go in and grayscale everything. And then I'll go back in and I can, you know, I mean, there's another way I can go about this. I can, instead of using like a brown like that, I can use a different kind of brush, which is a bit of a softer, more air, like a airbrush type. And then you see here, do it this way. So now I'm building up the color a bit, right?
Oh.
And keeping
Yeah.
some of that blue, right? And I can erase it, you know, or another thing I could do is I can keep this brown and then create like a mask so that it stays like it's kind of like imagine you have like this like plastic on top of the art,
Yep.
and then you start to like remove some of the plastic, and it creates like a almost like a shadow or a light, right? It's called masking. So it's something that you can do traditionally, and digitally it's really easy to do. So essentially, let's say I want to make it seem like there's like shadow underneath or bounce light or whatever I want to call this, right? And give a little bit more of like a you know, like vary up the color a little bit on the cookie, right? I could do that too. And since I put a mask on it, I've kept the integrity of the solid color underneath it. So if I just disable this, so now you can see it goes back to that solid color brown. So I haven't lost anything. So if I want to like, you know, create a whole color library of like what each character's local colors are, I can do that. And then once I've created a mask, now I can go in and vary that color, but it's still gonna, I know what that consistent color is going to be because it's here as well as in my library, if that makes
Right
sense.
on.
Right?
Yeah.
So, you know, and then of course I can go and I can do the same thing with, let's say the pants here. I don't know what I'm just going to make. I honestly, I don't know what the colors of these things are yet, but so let's give them purple pants, right? And I could always.
Yeah.
So now I filled in his purple pants here, kind of like the Incredible Hulk, and I can go in here and erase a bit of it so that it feels like it's, you know, the parts that are darker are like shadow or something like that, and you know, whatever. I mean, it just gives it a little bit more of like like a more gradiated type of value to it. I'm not sure if this is the way I would go about doing this, but that is one way of coloring that I can do. And of course, like I can use a brush that's a bit, this brush here. Let's see, I can go into my faded halftone brush. Where's my brushes over here? Brush settings, here we go. And then this is something we discovered together.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
I bring this in at 75 because I like that size, and then I could always go in and, You can see here if I zoom in a little bit, you can actually
Yes,
see
please.
that, right?
Yes, that's so cool.
Yeah, so I can always use this. That could be the thing I do for color if I wanted to, right? So there's like all different possibilities that I can do for this project. I just haven't. It'll tell me once I get to it. And actually this is helping me at the moment too, because I can be like, okay, maybe I do like it with the gradiated, like the half tone, doing that to the local color, right?
Hmm.
So anyway,
Yeah,
who
that's a
knows?
cool brush.
I don't
I'm
know.
glad that we talked about that brush and like sort of had a minute to tinker with it. And I'm glad it's working out so well because yeah, the page you were working on last time, um, the effects you were showing off with it, I thought were really interesting.
Yeah,
And I also think like yeah, the use of halftones just with regard to the history of comics, art, and printing in general, really. Yeah, it's just a cool homage and yet sort of still culturally relevant. I guess that doesn't feel like the right term, but it feels good to
it still
see.
works. It still works
Yeah.
for at least the way I draw, right? So, but yeah. Anyway, so that's kind of, just long story short, like, the idea behind this, and it does take some skill because like as I'm doing this, I'm also thinking about like, the lighting and stuff. Like it does. You have to, it helps you plan ahead by seeing it this way. You kind of go, okay, like, um, as I'm putting in all the different values here, I'm thinking like, okay, so I may have some situation where, um, let's see, I could go in with, again, with that brush we were using, and something a little darker maybe, and just kind of, so that's it. So I can, let's clear that way. Here we go. So I could go in here,
Oh,
uh, and give it like that kind of, so it's almost like it's in a spotlight, but it helps direct the eye because I could always do it on the other side too, to make it
mm,
like as if it's like we're seeing them in a spotlight kind of thing. And that's where you can fudge the lighting, right? Because maybe there's a direct light coming from above, causing that kind of effects a bit. But
yeah.
you're doing it. You can fade it a little bit more if you want to, or whatever you want to do. There's so many different options of it available to do, right? So it's just a matter of like, does it work with the story? Um, and since I've already used a lot of the, like you can see here, I've already used some of that, effect of the half tone, right, in the on the floor and all that kind of stuff, uh, you know, um, or in the window and stuff like that. I think it would work
Hmm.
with us too, right? So, um, I'll use it somehow. I'm just not sure exactly how.
Yeah,
Right.
go with what feels good, right? What suits visually the eye that you're enjoying and what you think will read good later. And
Yep.
as you've mentioned already, like if you hit the end of the project and it just doesn't work, change it.
Yep.
Awesome. So okay, question. You don't have to show me, but I am curious. When you have um because you've been using the term local color, and I've never heard it before. I really like it because I understand it. It makes sense. But when you have your character Bible or your color Bible, if you will, um, I'm imagining for practicality reasons, it's just like a blank page that you could pull up, and it just has a bunch of different blotches of colors with like so and so's skin tone, so and so's shirt, so and so's.
So right here is,
Oh, not even. It's just like a full. Oh, cool.
so there you go. That's like I just recorded, uh, when I was using like different. Yeah, mine isn't that diverse. I mean, um, it's just more or less like, some people have like a lot, like very colorists will have like a lot of colors that they'll use for depending on the environment that they're working in and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I keep it very simple, just because like it's I find that when it becomes too complicated, you forget, and then it's like to be consistent like that. When and on top of for a color artist too, that's their thing. That's the only thing they're working on.
I was just gonna say, yeah.
Yeah, but for me, I'm thinking about. I'm also thinking, okay, wait, did I draw the details on this page? Does the ink lines look correct? Where am I going to put the lettering? Like, I have so many things I'm thinking about when I'm doing this that I just try to keep it as simple as possible for me, just because it's one less thing for me to have to think about, right?
Oh,
So,
exactly.
yeah, it's just like again, like going back to this, the keeping these values the same way, it makes it easy for me to, for the most part, be somewhat consistent. Because it's really, I'm really just my choice for values for the most part, I think, are because I generally stay out of the darker. Like, I don't really do too many things that are like 75 or 80%. At least unless it's like in a real dark environment. So I'm working somewhere within like the 15 or 20% to like, so it's really, it's like at the end of the day, somewhere around 10 or 12 different value choices that I'm using
Right
throughout. And that keeps things pretty simple for me. And then when I do color, it's a similar thing. I always try to, because I'm doing this, a lot of the color that I can use already comes from those, the monochromatic color you're using.
Yeah.
So the hue, I guess you can say the hue. This hue of the blue. It's all these different values within this hue of blue. Um, I may use those, right? So I'll use them for backgrounds or whatever.
Awesome. It is also just want to say, and again, I appreciate for you, this is like, yeah, whatever. This is day-to-day life. But to watch you flip through so many different options and tools within Photoshop so fast, and also like the way that you're highlighting, like when you highlighted the sign that Dustin's climbing over there, um, you did it, and it looked like you were selecting, half of Dustin's leg and his back end. But I also appreciate like seeing it. The layer that you're working on doesn't contain Dustin at all in any capacity, other than it had the sign on it. So
You
yeah,
mean
for
this
you
right here?
mentally, for you to have all of that like contained and shifting through it, it's really cool to see.
Yeah, I mean, some people will make like they will make like layers of everything, and I don't do that. I keep it. I try to keep it somewhat simple. I have a bad habit. I don't label them like I should, but it's for me. So if I have, whenever I have to share a file with somebody, I make sure that I go back in and uh, label everything.
Yep,
But
that's
yeah,
so
like
nice of you.
so yeah, for the most part, like I did start to ink lines, panels, right? Um, so there's, yeah. So for the most part, like I'll have, I mean, this I would label as like flats, right? And then I may label this like color or something like that. So I have like ink lines, my panel, right? Because oftentimes I don't want to necessarily have my ink lines connecting with my panel. If I decide I want to shift the panel over, it makes it a little bit easier for me. And if I
Right
have
on.
special, sometimes I've got, not on this page, but sometimes I've got special ink lines where they
Oh,
would require like a color hold, which is like where you take like the so if I were to let's see, easier way for me to do it, just be like, so let's say there's like some kind of like a bright light that I want to make sure that I have as like a So like if let's say I want to make like an orange glowy thing above it,
Yeah.
right? That would be a color hold, right?
Okay. Yeah. Like it could be a title, for instance.
Yeah, it's just a separate. It's just instead of because all these ink lines below are connected, and
Hmm.
technically, if I wanted to, there's a way for me to. So I put that little
The
um,
lock. Yeah.
lock there, but it's an empty lock, and if I go in, I could technically um, start to color the pants like this, like if it's as if it's an orange or something. I could do that, and some people do that where they'll go in and break up uh, the uh, each of the body parts may have a different color outline,
Hmm.
right? It's kind of like what Disney does. And as a matter of fact, that's what I did for Disney. I did
Oh,
basically color
nice.
holds, digital.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, it's ink and filling in. It's kind of similar to what I'm doing here. It's filling in um, the flats and putting in sometimes like because Disney would have like the a skin tone for each person might be the outline of their skin tone may be different. If you have a frog, it's a darker green. If it's a
Yeah.
person, maybe, or if it's like a person with a darker skin tone, it's going to be a darker color outline. And then for somebody lighter, it's going to be lighter. So anyway, those are like color holds, right?
Cool.
So, um, but yeah. So anyway, um, there's and a project like this hypothetically, I guess I could if I wanted to make them have different color. That just adds a whole different level of work that I have to
Yeah.
think
Oh,
about. So anyway,
I mean,
my dad wants me to say that I used to do all this stuff before there was um, digital, and so I learned some of the basics of this kind of stuff, both at my parents' uh, their when they owned kind of like an advertising agency, and so I think I've talked about that before. So
yeah. You've definitely mentioned on an earlier show, and like how you basically were working as the in the advertising agency. You were doing some of the art. Um, didn't know you worked for Disney. That's pretty cool too.
oh
Um,
yeah, we're
yeah, you'd mentioned that you'd done like packaging and stuff, which I think is super cool. Thinking about like doing the art on an object that is then going to be printed onto cardboard in 3D, you know, become a round object or a square or whatever box. Um, I think that's fascinating. But also getting to watch this process, really darn cool. Um, and yeah, a quick shout out to those again watching with us live. Thank you kindly, much appreciated. Do feel free to drop questions into the chat, whether you're on YouTube, Twitch, um, and if you're witching, if you're watching with us sometime live in the future, so very much so not live. Um, thanks for tuning in. I appreciate it. Hope you're enjoying Keith's art and the detailed and yet highly approachable manner in which we're learning so much about flatting.
hmm yeah. There's a lot to it that like I think I mean especially like there is the very basic flatting which doesn't require a huge amount of skill, but there's a lot more to it, right, than that. And so, I mean, I know people that will flat for artists where all they're doing is they have a pre-existing color library and they know to your point they have like a little story bible with each character as to what their
Mhm.
colors are supposed to be, and that's all they're doing is making sure that they fill that in. But it's more than that because they have to there's always going to be um, like circumstances or situations where like I don't know what color this is supposed to be, and so you have to have understanding of like color theory and stuff like that. So there's more to it than that, but ultimately once you get used to it then it's just a matter of like filling in all the shapes correctly, and then somebody a color artist will come in and actually render it and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's so cool. And like there's so much that goes into art on any level, but specifically comics that just so many people do not get to see. And I think it is such a travesty, especially when unfortunately so many people I know can read a 24 to 30 page comic book in, I think the record I've seen is someone ripped through one and read it in like a minute. And I'm like, are
Right.
you even seeing what you're reading? Like, are you reading all the words? Because there's not that many words in a comic book normally. Are you even getting all of those in at least? Um, but then yeah, like all the detail that must be missing. That's why, like for me, when I'm reading a comic, like a typical comic book that I might pick up, usually 30 minutes. Because I'll try and make
Mhm.
sure that I one read everything and understand it. I am admittedly a slow reader. But then it's also like I'm sitting with like a ton of incredible, beautiful art in front of me. Enjoy it. See what's in it. See if there's stuff hidden in it. What's the weird objects that maybe the artist decided to put in or the writer wanted included. Why?
Yeah.
What was the gimmick there? What was the nod that maybe there's something in there that only if you're really paying attention you'll find, or if you find it, maybe you won't even know what it is because it's like a personal inside joke. Like that's
Yeah.
all the kind of stuff that I really think is cool in comics, and I find in indie comics you get a fair bit of it.
Yeah, and I mean it's important. I have a tendency of reading too quickly through a book sometimes too, and I mean, you have to really, especially one that you're enjoying, or somebody's an artist is creating some interesting compositions that I've never seen before, or haven't seen done in that way, a certain way, and you're just like, oh, this is really cool, like that kind of stuff. I'll go back and look at it and see if I can pick something up, or I'm looking at it. I think for the like the way that they may draw anatomy, like
Yep.
it's essentially symbols, right? Like they've got a symbol for how to draw certain things, and you, especially with an artist that uses much more. Hey, Paul.
Uh,
Thanks, Paul. Um,
Absolutely. I'm going to bring his comment up on screen. Good friend and longtime viewer, Paul Kemp. Good evening, gentlemen. Always great to catch your awesome show live. Thank you, Paul. The comment page looks fantastic. Couldn't agree more.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's once you start understanding like the symbols that an artist is using for, let's say how to draw like an eye, right? Or because when you can start to break it down and you start to see like the different lines and shapes and things they're using for an eye and the
Hmm.
specific way they do it, because not every, there's so many different ways you can draw an eye so that you can make it super realistic, but then there's also like the way I'm drawing the eyes, which are just like black eyeballs, right? So I
Yeah.
mean, there's all different ways to approach that, and so um, I've always, especially when you have somebody who has like a really strong style, and the way that they do that kind of stuff, I always like to take a look and go, oh, that's cool. See if I can utilize that somehow in the way I draw. All right.
Oh, yeah. Like one thing I always found interesting, like talking about symbols and the way you're communicating your drawing and what those things all mean. One thing I always took and found very interesting in anime, so obviously in manga as well, is a common trope, and this is like massively adopted. And I've never thought about it, but maybe it is in the Western world as well. But in manga specifically, when you have a character who has not smaller, thinner eyes, perhaps is the best term for it. They're often a more evil character, whereas if they have larger, rounder eyes, they're often
Mm-hmm.
a good character. Um, the not that this is added in any way a recommendation for younger people, but for the older folks, 18 and up, we'll say in the viewership, there is a anime film called Ninja Scroll, and one, it's really good. It's pretty old, but it's very good. Um, but in it, there is extreme emphasis on eye shape when it comes to
Mm-hmm.
good guys versus bad guys,
Interesting. Yeah.
and like it's right off the bat. And you can even see it, I think, in like more. I'm gonna say modern, and I'm gonna name a retro one because it's how long I've not been watching anime. But in the show Naruto, Naruto's eyes are drawn huge, and then
Mm-hmm.
like the main big first villain named Orochimaru, who's like the snake dude, his eyes are drawn extremely small.
Right.
But yeah, that cultural symbol I find interesting, and like extrapolating it out, I'm very curious if there is cross cultural because of globalization, if there is cross cultural adoption of those symbols, because like I'm going to call it the Disney dots, but the way you've drawn their eyes, right? You see it in a lot of Disney work, also in whoever owns the rights to Scooby Doo. I don't know who that is. Nickelodeon, maybe? No, that doesn't seem right.
Scooby Doo is
Nelvana?
no Scooby Doo. I think it would be Paramount. Is that, or is it ABC? ABC is
Let's see.
Paramount. It's hard to at this point.
Yeah, I mean they all sort of
Like
eat each other.
so many.
Oh, Warner Brothers.
Oh, yeah, Warner Brothers.
Apparently, it's Warner Brothers.
Yeah, I was like trying to remember. It used to be on ABC, so
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, like the black beans, if you will, or the coal eyes. But yeah, I'm very curious about like with globalization, cross cultural adoption of those symbols, and if that ever happens. Yeah, maybe
well,
stuff I'll
I
never
mean,
know.
and you could vary it up. Like you could have like a situation where when if I were to like zoom in on a character, instead of just seeing the coal eyes, you actually might see like, the irises in there, right? Like maybe I would actually give it a little bit more detail so that you can, it makes it a little bit more. Um, like that's
Rendered.
another style, right? Where you're kind of coming in so close that you can see like the details. You can start to see the veins in the eyes and all that kind of stuff. You can see all the crags and and the way that uh, the brow kind of folds over the eyelid or whatever. Like like there's like for sure. And then even within like a some comics are animated, there's like different. You've got character that may have eyes like this, and then you've got the more Disney-fied, like almond shaped,
Disney-fied, yeah.
Eyes with the super big um, irises and the really like pronounced highlights in their eyes, right? Like sometimes like double highlights and stuff like that. And right, so you have like of course you got the heavy lids or the eyelashes and stuff like that, right? So like you
The
can
way
have
you're ripping this off so fast and that style contrasting your own, like right next to each other, my brain is like, stop, it hurts. It's such a strong contrast. I'm like,
you can do that. You can have like, especially if it works for the story, right? Where you have like a character that's very innocent looking, and then yeah, ABC is Disney. But
thank you, Leo.
But yeah, like so you could have like like if Pac-Man, right, is in a show with like a Disney character or something, like you could mix it all up, right? There's no, but to your question of symbols, I mean, there's all different. There's cross pollination with mainstream comic artists like Humberto Ramos, right, or Scotty Young, like those like they're very stylized characters and stuff. You have like some characters that are, if you want to think about like some people have really really big hands, in a and then really small like upper like arms and forearms and stuff, right? That could be something that you draw consistently, right? It's all just dependent on what works for the story or what comes. Some people, that's just how they draw, right? They have like a certain particular way they like to draw their characters, and that ends up being what you would call style, right? Some characters have. I'm drawing a comic. No, that's not it. I'm drawing a comic where the main character's head is like super large. It's just like almost looks like a kidney bean. It's so big, right? Um, and and I'm not really going to draw him completely, but he
What a shape.
yeah, like he's got a really large noggin and stuff like that, and uh, so it's one of those things where but it's within the head, I have to make sure that I can draw like the regular features that you would see, and then um, on top of that, the other characters that are within the universe of this character don't necessarily have heads like that, right? So, but they do have other features that may be more pronounced. So it's like you have to figure out whatever the world is, does it work in that world, right?
Yeah. Love it. Wow. Yeah, tone is such an interesting thing, like when it comes to what you can get away with, what works. And like I said, it comes down to just basically what the reader is willing to, or rather what you can get the reader to accept without taking them out of the story. And I think, especially because like there's so many comics going on right now, and so many different stories and art styles out there. Yeah, I think we could definitely get readers to accept quite a lot without sort of breaking that immersion, um, or suspension of disbelief, as the film folks might say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's all for me personally, I'm a little bit all over the place when it comes to like style. I mean, I know you say what when you see one of my like my art, you're like, oh, that's Keith's work, but I can see that too, but I also think like this doesn't exactly look like anything that you've seen me draw before, right? So
Correct. Yes.
there's certain sensibilities that you may, you know, although if you see me draw more of this, then you may, I guess I could change that. You may go, oh, that's for sure. That's just his more cartoony style,
Hmm.
right? So, uh, and I do have certain sensibilities when it comes to like, I like to ground my characters in reality so that they're, it feels like the environment they're in, even if it's like a really kind of stylized environment, still feels like it's lived in, right? So,
Yeah.
um, I always try to do that, right? But or the way that my characters move, I always give them like I like to make them emote in a very human way. Like these characters aren't like super cartoony, like super Looney Tunes esque. Um, Although I guess
Yeah.
it can be a little bit more, but not because the way I design them by nature, they're not going to like stretch so much, right? They're not going to stretch or squash so much. So, it's just they just have like weird heads and stuff. They're anthropomorphized characters, right?
Yeah. Like if Dustin wasn't a bunny, you could still see him and go, "Oh yeah, it's Dustin." Like he the way it's moving, the body positioning, it's all very much so like normal human movement. Um, Even our friendly chocolate chip, like again, the body language extremely human. Just the fact that his head's a chocolate chip lets you know he's
Mm-hmm.
kind of cartoony. Yeah, it's all like really interesting to me, like what you can get away with. I think for your style, what I'm learning, and I think I am learning even what your cartoony style looks like. Um, but I think what I've noticed and what I pick up on is just like it's granular stuff. I think it's the way that you do lines, the weight of the lines that you like to use. Um, now that you're using the halftones tool, it's the amount of halftones I might see in something, but done in like a subtle way, or not. It's not the main point. Like the fact that you've got halftones on the page that we're seeing on the right, on
Hmm.
the floor, but it's not like the main point. It's just it's a tool you're using for shading and coloring or
Yeah.
implying those things.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's really interesting because I definitely know for a fact, like one of the first art styles I, as a reader, picked up was Jim Lee because he is iconic when it comes to the impact on Batman, Superman, X-Men, and through whatever his process was to get to where he was at and with that particular look and how famous it became. It definitely is something that I recognize. Um,
Hmm.
but I recognize it in context of like the whole picture. Whereas with yourself, I almost recognize your line weight, which sounds really weird and almost creepy. Like I'm paying too much attention, like stalker details. But yeah, like your line weight, the specific way that your lines look compared to another artist is what I
Hmm.
see. And like
Hmm.
it's interesting because like you showed it in a previous episode. So folks out there watching, again, whether you're with us live now, thank you, or checking us sometime in the future, go check out previous episodes because we have Keith is like in great detail shown so much about his process and the way that he makes art, but also talks in general useful techniques that you can apply even if you don't do comics, or even if you're just starting in the visual media. um you can take a lot of the stuff he's providing and giving and really get use out of it. um but like, yeah, it's like the things like your line weight, the way you choose to, I think your composition I understand, whereas like with, I'll say, more mainstream predominant artists,
Hmm.
like who's doing Batman now? The new number one came out. It's sitting right over there. Tomomori? No, he's a colorist. Anyway, whoever's doing that book, I know that art style in the context of superheroes. I don't know if that same person drew this book. I would be able to just pick out their style. But yeah, I know your line weight, and that feels weird.
Well, I mean, it's kind of, I guess it's kind of like how you can tell from a distance the way that somebody walks, right? They just have
Yeah.
a way of movement that starts to become normal to you, right? Once you become familiar with how they move their body. And I think that there's something to be said about how the lines I decide to use for when I'm drawing, that there's a certain kind of weight to it, a certain kind of looseness to it that I think you kind of go, oh, that feels like a Keith drawing, right? Where somebody else may have a very very clean.
Hmm.
Maybe there's a even thickness to it. There's not a lot of line variation to it, and you may go, oh, that's this person. I recognize that, right? So I get that. It's for sure. Once you get used to somebody's, there's certain things that are their signature. So regardless of what they're drawing, you kind of get a sense of like the way that they draw faces, or the way that they, to your point, like some of the tools that they use, they seem to be consistent from story, from book to book and story to story they're working on.
Yeah. Like another example, I really enjoy. Another one of my favorite comic artists is Tony Daniel,
Hmm.
and specifically the lines he uses to convey fabric wrinkling. Something about the way he draws fabric wrinkling.
Hmm.
I'm like, oh, that's a Tony Daniel piece, and I really like it. It scratches my brain in the right way.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think that there's um, yeah, every artist is going to like appeal to us in the certain way that depending on our where we are in regards to like our life, right? Like it just kind of
Yeah.
imprints upon you, right? For me, it's like some of the earlier John Buscema and Ramirez and those artists that were from the 70s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, which is when I grew up reading comics. In the 90s, when I was like becoming more of a teenage adult, a lot of the
Uh,
artists that you're talking about were like, I like. Don't get me wrong. Jim Lee's always been a good artist, but he was never my favorite. I like Mark Silvestri, if anything, from that group. Mark Silvestri was probably always my favorite of them. Will Sportasio was another one I really liked. It's the others in that era, all the image guys that I kind of all that line work, all the hatching and stuff never appealed to me. I always like more of like a simpler line or much more like an Alex Toth where it's like sparseness of line. Not that I can do that myself, but I like that. I've always appreciated when they can tell a story in a minimal amount of lines. That to me was a really cool thing. But yeah, I mean, and some of the stuff Jim Lee's doing now, where he's putting in a lot less line and letting color, the colorists kind of do some more of the work. Or I don't know if he's doing his own color work, but like some of that kind of stuff.
Hopefully. Maybe not. I don't know. Yeah, but yeah, I think you're right. Like it's definitely interesting to, and I wish every art, and I mean every artist. It'd be really cool if, and I guess maybe it's a little morbid or like depressing, but almost as they either opt to retire, because I hope all artists get to make enough money that they can satisfactorily retire when they so choose, and pursue whatever else they want afterward, or perhaps near to or after they've passed. If like we could somehow get an art retrospective of like, hey, when this person started, here's where their first publications. These were, and like just show an evolution over time. Because I think that'd be really cool to be able to get to see.
They do have like the Modern Masters, which is like I don't know if they do that anymore, but that was kind of what you're talking about, where they had like a series of magazines that kind of went through this history of like a comic book artist and at least to where they were at that point, not necessarily to where they retired, but there's a bunch of them I have that are great. Like we have a couple. We have 2 minutes. We don't have them. Do I have them over here? No. Yeah. So these books here, which this is a good one, Bruce Timm, right? So
Hell yeah,
he's still creating, but this is like showing, like there's some of the work they did throughout their life, and as well as like talking. It's an interview essentially between whoever's writing this and then the artist. So
awesome.
But anyway, yeah. So hopefully I'll have now that I've thought about it, I'm like, okay, now I have to figure out what color scheme I want to do for this thing. I'm thinking, yeah, maybe I want it more pink. I don't know. We'll see. So
you'll figure it out, and it'll be awesome in the end.
Yep, I'll figure it out.
Oh yeah. But Keith, yeah, we're at the end of our hour. We have like 50 seconds. So once again, to the folks out there, thank you for tuning in. If you're watching from the future, much appreciated. Hope you enjoyed and learned something about coloring, flatting, and light. As always, like, comment, subscribe for more. Let us know in the comments if you want us to do anything different. Feel free to ask questions. And Keith, where can people find you?
Okay, so my socials are like Keith Grachow, my name. So Facebook, Instagram. Same thing with my website. I think my website's kgrachow.com. So it's my first initial and grachow.com. But I'm going to be at the Guelph Comic Jam this Saturday. And are you going, Konrad?
I don't know. My partner is currently in Montreal, picking them up on Friday afternoon or Friday evening. So possibly, maybe not. Although I would like to. Maybe I should go. If not, folks can see you there.
Yeah, I'll be. It's at the Dragon Comic Shop, or it's outside of it. It's near there. You can go to their website or their Facebook to find out more information. I believe it's like from 10 to 4 or something like that, 10 to 5. And it's going to be a bunch of comic book creators, indie, mainstream, all over the place. So
Love it. I hope you have a great weekend there. And yeah, to the folks at home, once again,